Hi, I'm Sofia Malone, and you're watching Herstory. Today, I'm gonna be Jane Goodall. Let's go bananas! Jane Goodall was born April 3rd, 1934, in London, England. She was like, pip pip, cheerio. When Jane was 1, her father got her a cute little stuffed animal chimp. And she was like, your name is Jubilee! On Jane's exact 4th birthday, her sister Judy was born. I wonder how Jane felt about that, sharing every single birthday with her little sister. Jane loved the animals so much, and she decided, when I grow up, I'm going to live in Africa. In 1952, Jane's parents divorced. She stayed in touch with her father, but she was much, much closer with her mother. After graduating high school, Jane got a job at a company that made documenting films. Those are films that tell stories about stuff. She hadn't forgotten about her dream to work with animals, but it would be really hard because she didn't have a college degree. Plus, she was a woman. Back in those days, women usually just became teachers or nurses. In 1956, Jane got a note from a family friend who bought a farm in Kenya, Africa. Jane was like, oh my gosh, hooray, cheerio folks, I'm going to Africa. Jane worked as a waitress to save up enough money. And finally, she left for Africa on March 13th, 1957. She traveled for weeks, 3 weeks, by boat to get there. At a party, Jane met a famous scientist, Louis Leakey, who lived in Kenya and found fossils from the earliest humans. He offered Jane a job and taught her all about chimpanzees. Like, did you know that wild chimps are only found in Africa? Jane loved studying chimps so much that in July 1960, she was like, I'm moving, and moved to Gombe Stream Game Reserve. Jane lived in a tent by herself out in the wild, and the African government didn't like it, so her mom came to live with her. Studying chimps was not easy. Jane had to carry around binoculars, a blanket, food, and coffee. She had to wear the same clothes every single day and crawl through vines and got bit by flies and cut by sharp grass. And when she tried to get close to the chimps, they ran away. Soon Jane and her mother both got very sick with malaria. They had no medicine, so they were sick for 2 weeks. Can you imagine being all like, and for 2 weeks? After they got better, Jane's mother was like, I'm too old for this, and went back to England, but Jane stayed in Africa. Finally, there was a chimp who accepted Jane. She named him David Greybeard because of his gray hair on his chin. He came up to Jane, looked at her, took a fruit from her. That was so cool. That was the closest a chimp had ever gotten to her. She noticed that he used a blade of grass to poke holes and used leaves as washcloths. The National Geographic Society gave Jane enough money for another year of research when she told them about David Greybeard. In August 1963, Jane's first article came out in National Geographic magazine. But she couldn't also take photos, so Mr. Leakey arranged a young photographer to join Jane. His name was Hugo Van Lawick. Hugo's like, hey, and Jane was like, hi, and soon they fell in love. Aw, so romantic. And they got married in London on March 28th, 1964. Mr. Leakey wanted the world to accept Jane as an expert, so he helped her get into Cambridge University in England. Cambridge allowed Jane's work with the chimps to count toward a college degree. In 1965, Jane completed her doctorate and now is called Dr. Jane Goodall. She loved being like, I'm a woman and I'm a doctor. Snap that. In 1967, Jane and Hugo had a son. His name was also Hugo, but everyone called him Grub. Jane grew more and more and more famous. She wrote a book called In the Shadow of the Man that came out in 1971 and was a bestseller. It was even translated into 50 different languages. She also had a program on TV called Miss Goodall and the Wild Chimpanzees. Unfortunately, after 10 years of marriage, Jane and Hugo got divorced. She was like, bye-bye, see you later, and got remarried to some guy named Derek Bryson. In 1977, the Jane Goodall Institute was set up to continue the study of chimps and protect them and other wild animals. She also started programs like Take Care, that planted trees in Africa, and Chimpanzee, that helped chimps and zoos get bigger living spaces and make their homes more like nature. Jane still lives in Tanzania today and spends most of her time traveling the world, giving talks about things that are important to her. And the rest, you ask? The rest? That's Herstory. Thanks for swinging!